Alright, so today we're looking at section 7.4. It is the first lesson that's going to eventually get us to a point where we can factor trinomials. So we'll start with a trinomial, 3 terms, and we'll rewrite it as the multiplication of 2 binomials. That's really what we're getting into tomorrow. Today we're just going to practice a skill you need in order to do that. It's finding number combinations that multiply to a certain number and add to another number. So that's why the section number is just find 2 numbers. We're not even doing any sort of factoring today. We're just finding these magical number combinations that multiply to something and add to something else. The absolute hardest part of this entire lesson is keeping your signs straight. So we got to go back to the chapter 1 rules with positive and negatives when you multiply and the rules when you add. So we'll talk a lot about signs today. Today it is also very important that you use your factor sheets. So if you still have your factor sheets, get those out. They're going to make this lesson about 10 times easier than it would be without the factor sheets. Go ahead and write number 1 in your notebooks. Write m equals 6, a equals 5. The m stands for multiply. The a stands for add. So our goal is to find 2 numbers that multiply to 6. Whoops, hold on. Multiply to 6 and add to 5. The easiest way to do this is to write out the factors of 6 or just find 6 on your factor sheet. Go down the list. Do any of those combinations also add to 5?
No.
Which one?
3.
2 and 3. Good. 2 and 3 is the answer here. Now, a lot of times what will slow us down are the signs, but when everything's positive, everything's positive. Okay, so we don't have to really worry about the signs here. If you want to multiply to a positive and also add to a positive, both of the numbers need to be positive. So signs aren't going to slow us down when we're working with all positives, but once the negatives start appearing, that's when things are going to get a little trickier. Questions? On number 2, in your notebooks, you are going to start by writing the problem. M equals 15, A equals 8. Always start with the M number. There are an infinite amount of ways to add and get 8. So don't start with the add. That gives you way too many options. Start with the multiply. There's only a certain combination that will multiply to give you 15. Can anyone tell me what those numbers are? Yes.
1, 3, 5.
Okay, so here are the different ways you can multiply and get a 15. I'm not so worried about the signs because everything's positive at the moment. Go down the list. Does this add to give you 8?
No.
Does this add to give you 8?
Yeah.
Okay, there you go. So this is my answer. 3 and 5. Do you see why the factor sheet is so crucial here? Yeah, I mean, you can do it without a factor sheet. It's just going to take you a lot longer, like 15 divided by 1, 15 divided by 2, 15 divided by 3, 15 divided by 4. You have to first come up with all the possibilities, and then you have to check the addition. It's so much easier with a factor sheet. What are your questions on number 2? Yeah, he said he feels like these are about to get really hard. Just the positive and negatives make it hard. All right, here is number 3. So still in the land of all positives. This is where things are good. Don't have to worry too much. So there's 2 numbers on the board. Multiply to 24, add to 14. Which one do I want to start with on my factor sheet? The 24. This is always your starting numbers. I'm going to write them out over here. You can just look at them on your factor sheet. Going down the list, you can probably pretty quickly see that the only combination that's going to add to 14 is 2 and 12. So those are our answers. Questions?
All you gotta do is just like to get the answer. All you gotta do is just multiply.
Multiply to 24 and add to 14. Yep. All right, you guys ready to kick it up a notch?
No.
Nope? Okay. Go ahead and write this one down. So now we want to multiply to 15, but we want to add to negative 16. So I'm still just going to start with this. So the ways to make a 15 through multiplication are 1 and 15 and 3 and 5, right? Would any of those add to give us a negative 16?
Yeah.
So 1 and 15 would add to give us a positive 16. But what could we do? So you just want to make the 15 negative?
Yeah.
What is positive 1 times negative 15? That would give us a negative 15. So instead of just making the 15 negative, what should we do? Make the 1 negative as well. A negative times a negative will give us a positive when we multiply, but it will give us a negative when we add. So that's the trick here. You have to make them both negative. A good thing to remember is when the multiply number is positive, they're either both positives or both negatives. You got to look to the add number to figure out what they are. And then once you think you have it, I always check with the calculator just real quick. Type in negative 1 times negative 15. See if it gives you positive 15. And then do it again with a plus sign in the middle and see if it gives you negative 16. It's very easy to check these. But it's kind of like a riddle. You know, you got to play around with the signs a little bit to see how to get it just right. Questions? All right, here's number 5. So in this case, we want to multiply to get positive 30, and we want to add to get negative 13. So I'll start just by thinking of the ways to make a 30, and then we'll sort of go back and evaluate what we want to do with our signs. So we want to multiply to be a positive number. The way we do that is either 2 positives or 2 negatives. What do we want in this case?
3 plus 10. No, negative 13.
Yeah, they need to both be negative. The only way to multiply to a positive is they have to be the same. But we want them to add to a negative, so they both have to be negative. So you can just make them all negative in your list and then play around with them. Or it sounded like you girls saw right away that this was going to give us 13 and then just sort of manipulated the signs from there. It just depends how your brain works. I usually figure out the signs first, then deal with the numbers, but it's kind of just up to the way you see it. Again, type this in just to check. Negative 3 times negative 10 is positive 30. Negative 3 plus negative 10 is negative 13, so we're good. What are your questions? All right, here's number 6. All right, so we're multiplying to get a 10. So I can do 1 and 10, 2 and 5, right? But check out our signs. We want to multiply to get a negative number. How do you multiply and end up with a negative?
1 has to be negative.
One has to be negative. The other one has to be positive. So we have several options here. We can make the smaller numbers negative, or we could make the bigger numbers negative. And the way you can kind of see ahead of time which one is going to work is by this number. If this number is negative, your larger factor should be negative, because when you add them together, you want more negatives than positives. So it's probably not either of these two, because those would give you positive addition numbers. Does either of these give us a negative 3 when we add them?
Negative 0.5.
2 and negative 5. Remember, adding two numbers with different signs is more like subtraction. You subtract the numbers, keep the sign of the larger number. So again, the only way to get a negative is if the larger one is negative. And in this case, it's 2 and negative 5. So again, quick recap. If the multiplication number is negative, you're going to have one of each, one positive, one negative, and the larger number is going to take the sign of the addition number. That's kind of the shortcuts if you want to save time each time, or you can just make a list every single time and just go through it and rule things out as you go until you find the winning combination. It's just kind of up to you.
So the bigger number will be the negative?
Yes, in this case, the bigger one's the negative, because they're adding to give us a negative. If they were adding to give us a positive, we'd want the bigger number to be positive. What are your questions?
Do we have to show those things?
You do not need to show this stuff because I know you have a factor sheet. I just show them so even those who don't have the factor sheet, I know some of them have been lost along the way, at least they can see what numbers we're talking about. All right, here is number 7. So again, on this one, I will just start by listing the factors of 18. But I don't want 18. I want negative 18. So what do I know about multiplying to get a negative number?
One big negative.
One of them has to be negative. Do you think it's going to be our bigger number or our smaller number that's going to be negative? Smaller, because they're going to add to give us a positive. So you can just go make the smaller ones negative. Now, if that step doesn't make sense to you, write out two separate lists, one with the smaller number negative, one with the bigger number negative, and then just check them all. If you can rule out making the larger numbers negative because of this number sign, do it. That's the way I do it. So again, negative multiplication number means one's positive, one's negative. The larger one takes this sign. You want more positives in your two numbers than negatives, so I just made the little ones negative. Now check through them.
This don't make no sense. It's positive. Negative 2, 9.
Yeah, negative 2, positive 9.
Yeah.
What are your questions? Now, again, some of you might actually just write out two lists and then just sort of eliminate options. That's fine too. We just sort of reasoned through a way that eliminated all these right away, so I didn't even write them. If you want to write them out, go for it. What are your questions? All right, here is number 8. All right, so I want to start by looking at the 45 on my multiplication chart. All right, I think those are the only 3 ways, right? Now, I want both of the signs to be the same. Are they both going to be positive or both going to be negative? They're both going to be negative because they're adding to a negative number. So go through your lists and just make them all negative. And the reason I know that they have to have the same sign is because the multiply number is positive. But 2 positives won't add to give us a negative. We have to make them 2 negatives. So again, your knowledge of these sign rules is going to really help you go quick. If you don't know that much about the signs, Make a longer list. Leave the positives on the list. Check to see if they'll add to give you a negative 14. They will not. I'll tell you that right away. So you'll end up ruling them out as you go. But that's up to you. Yes, ma'am.
Always gonna like answer.
Oh, what is the answer?
-5 and -9.
-5 and -9. -5 times -9 is positive 45. -5 plus -9 is -14. What are your questions? All right, here's number 9. So I'm going to multiply to -12. So the ways to make a 12 are 1 and 12, 2 and 6, 3 and 4. How many of those numbers in each pair need to be negative? One of them. So I will just write it all out. I think some of you are getting a little lost in our signage shortcuts. So I'll just write out all the options. Here are all the different combinations that will multiply to give us a -12. Then just go through and check. This one adds to give me 11, so it's out. This one adds to give me 4, so it is out. This one adds to give me 1, so it is out. This one adds to give me -11, so it is out. Here I get a -4, so it is out. What is the only one that's going to work? 3 and -4. Very good. So that's a way to do it with almost no sign shortcuts. I wrote out every possible way to make a -12, and then I just, process of elimination, went through them. Questions so far? We got one more example, and then I'll give you guys your homework. 2 times -6 is -12. All of these give us -12. That's why they're on the list in the first place. So I first made all the possible options for this guy, the M number, and then I just saw which one gave me the A number. All right, one more. So I want to multiply to -6, add to -5. What are the ways to make a 6? We'll just, don't even worry about the signs at first. What's the way to make a 6? 1 and 6, 2 and 3. What are the ways to make a -6? 1 and -6, 2 and -3, -1 and +6, -2 and +3. Any other ways to make a -6 through multiplication? I don't believe so. Which one of those guys will give us a -5 if you would change the multiplication symbol to a plus sign? Which one? -2 and +3 would add to give us a 1.
2 and -3.
2 and -3 would add to give us a -1.
-1 and 6.
-1 and 6 is the winner. Remember, when one's positive and one's negative, it's more like subtraction than addition. So you got to be careful on ones like this. This is a very commonly missed one because 2 and 3 do add to give you 5, so you just sort of gravitate towards those, but the negatives are what gets you. All right, raise your hand if you have any questions. All right, here comes homework.